In this segment, we're going to be showing the standalone casing. It consists of a molding receiver. This is the actual molding, and this is a piece of the casing face. Now, if you put these three together, which the molding hooks in over the top of the receiver and then locks in the backside. And then your casing face will go right up to this point right here on the wall. Normally, your casings are about 4 3/4 inches wide. Just to round things out, we're going to make this a 5-inch casing, and we're going to picture frame it. For new construction application, we have to use one of our accessories. This is the accessory we're going to use. It looks a little bit like sill trim in the vinyl siding industry. We call this mullion receiver. All right? So what we're going to do is we're basically going to put this on all 4 sides of the window and miter the corners. To make a mitered corner in this, you basically want to take the width of your window and add 2.5 inches. So after you cut your length, you'll mark the edge as such. You take your snippers from the back side of the nail and flange, cut underneath and through, just like that. You can take your fingers, bend that up, and it should break right off. Now what you do is take another piece, run that down the side, and draw where the outside edge is so you know where to run your miter to. So when you go to put it back in, you're hanging a little bit over further than you want to be. You'll take another piece and run it down here, or measure 3/4 of an inch strong, because that's what the face of this measures. Make a mild angle back. Now you take your razor knife, stick it in the back side here, and pry this out a little bit so you can get your snipper in there, because you want to back cut this at a sharp angle. So you take your jaw of your snipper, stick it underneath, close it very lightly until you get up to the edge, and then cut a real deep angle. So that's more than a 45 degree, and what you want is clearance so that when you put your side piece on, it'll grip right here at the edge. So now I've got my first piece cut. You can see my angles. This is all set to install. So we start with our bottom first. Line up our edges. And again, you'd use a regular nail here instead of a finish nail. But I'm using a finish nail so I can take it apart and show it again when I do another demonstration. So now our bottom piece is on. Also, what I did here, because we're going with a 5-inch casing, I measured up off the edge of the window on the sides, top and bottom, 5 inches, and I drew lines out here to know where my outside was going to be for my receiver. So now I'm going to finish putting the mullion receiver around the window, the 2 sides and top. And that's it. The mullion receiver is on all the way around the window. So our next step is to prep our molding receiver for the wall. Now this has a flange in the back, so we're going to cut, for this application, we're going to cut this off. In order to do that, we're going to run our razor knife right down this seam. Then we take it, fold it back, then it breaks right off, and that gives us our flat piece. Our bottom piece will be the first piece we put on. And we're going to put this down where it's going to go, just to show you how it lines up. Now we're going to prep this for installation, so we have to make a few cuts in it to get it ready to go before we actually screw it on. So you want to come back off the edge 1.5 inches, and we're going to do a straight line cut down to here, and then we're going to cut across. But I'm going to use my saw for that, because trying to cut through all these locks and stuff with snippers does damage to the lock. So it comes out a lot better by using a saw to cut it. We're going to do a straight cut down to this flat section here, and then I'll finish cut it with my snippers. So now we've made our cut down through to the flat part, and we'll just take our snippers and cut that back on both sides, just like that. Then we have to prep the outside lock. We do that with a razor knife by coming back, 3/8 of an inch roughly. You drive your razor knife right down through it, make a small cut on the bottom, and then that piece breaks right off. The same thing on the other side. So now we've got the inside of the lock trimmed out so that when we put our side up, our flaps will line up right in the grooves. Now the last cut you got to make is just to angle this back and get some of that stock out of the way on both sides. Now the piece is ready to go. So we're going to put this on now, and as you can see, we've come back our 1.5 inches, gone down straight. We cut out our inside of our lock, and then we angle cut that down. So now that'll prevent anything from getting in our way after installation. So the next thing is to screw it on. The reason we're using screws here is if you were going to try and drive a nail in here, you're going to end up hitting either this lock or this lock and damaging it, so that when you go to put your molding on, it won't lock in properly. So we use screws for this to hold this on. So I line that up with my marks. Screw it in. We use lath screws. They're basically used for screwing screening onto wood for doing stucco and stuff like that. But they have a very nice head, very similar to a siding or a roofing nail. And you'll want a wide head to hold this down flush. If you were to use a regular screw, like a sheetrock screw or something like that, it has more of a tendency of puckering the vinyl as opposed to making it lay down straight and flat. Okay, for our side application, we're doing the same type of cutbacks, but the numbers are a little bit different. On the bottom, we're actually coming up 2.5 inches. Where we came back 1.5 here, we're coming back 2.5 here for the bottom of it, and for the top of it, we're coming down the same 1.5. So 2.5 on the bottom, 1.5 on the top. And after you've done your relief cut, she's ready to go. And this piece is all set. So now we're all set to install, so I'm going to line this up right on the edge of my line. And screw it in. All right, so now we'll do the other side. Again, your cuts backs are 2.5 on the bottom, 1.5 on the top. Now we're ready to install the top piece, and your measurement on your top is to measure back 2.5 on both sides and do the same series of cuts. So that's all cut and ready to go. All right, that's our molding receiver all installed. All right, again, this is our standard casing face, as you can see. What we're going to do to adapt it to this application is we're going to take our razor knife and actually cut this leg right off so that we have a flat piece of vinyl, and then we're going to rip this casing face down to 3 5/8 width to fill in this void here. To cut this leg off, just take your razor knife, put it right in that crease there, apply a little pressure, and drag it down. Then bend away from your cut. Very similar to how you rip down a piece of vinyl siding. You make a cut with your razor knife and then fold it. And there you have a flat piece of vinyl. Now we're going to take and rip this down to 3 5/8. So now what I did was I stuck this in my brake. The brake gives me a nice straight edge, and I scored it with my razor knife. So now I'm just going to bend it and pull it apart. Now this is the piece we want, and that's going to fill in this void right here. And I'm going to show you how to get that in there now. Okay, now we've got it cut flat, so we're going to install it. Get one side in, bow it a little bit, get the other side in. Now what we're going to do to get it in under here is we have to bow it a little bit. And that's it, she's in. So that'll do it. The casing face is installed. Now the next thing we're going to do is install the moldings. So what we do is we take a measurement from side to side and add about 2 inches, 1.5 to 2 inches. You want at least 3/4 of an inch on each side overlapping. Lay your piece up. So what you want to do is mark where the middle of the lock is on the side. And you can put a pencil mark right there. So now that I've got it marked, I'm going to take my square, draw a line to the outside edge. Do the same thing on the other end. So that's the outside edge of our molding. First thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the lock out. So you want to be right back to that line right there. Same thing on this side. Now you want to angle cut this there. You want to run a straight cut right along there, and also angle cut this. Mild angle, very similar to the way you cut J-channel. The same thing to the other end. Mild angle cut. Now we know this line here is our outside edge. So we're going to take and continue that line down on both sides. So now all of this stuff here is excess material that we're going to cut off. And we're going to make a mild angle. So I'm going to start in here and just cut right across this. A mild angle. The only part that's important here is your outside edge, which is up here. So I'm going to mildly angle this all the way out till I get out there. Just like that. Now the next step before we install is to fold these tabs over. You want to bend them a little bit strong and then bring them back to a point where they're square. Just like that. Now we're ready to install. Take your piece, walk it into your lock, slide it over to the edge, lock it all the way in, tap it into position. So now on your side piece, you want to bring your bottom down so it's even with the outside edge. And then you want to mark this edge of your molding on this molding so that we can take our template and do our miter cut. While you have it here, you want to get the very top edge of your molding so you can do another fold cut on the top. So here's our plastic template for making your miter cuts. I'm going to slide that up to our mark on the bottom. And draw the line. Also, while I got it, that mark on the edge on the top, I want to square that line right around. So we got a mark on the side and the top. Now we're going to cut it. So I'm going to start with my miter cut. You can see I got my fingers close. They're actually holding my blade in position while I start to cut down. I cut up to that first line, roll it over, just like the colonial molding for the one with siding. Roll it over, finish the cut. Come in this direction here, cut that off.
Okay, roll it a little more towards me. That's good.
Now we finish cutting out our line. Now on the back side, we want to give it just a little bit of an angle so this lock doesn't interfere with the flap. And then up top, we're going to do the same thing we did on the sides over here by making a flap. So we cut through the lock. I got this a little long. We don't really need that much length. I'm going to take a little bit of that off and then do a pie cut or a mild angle, whichever wording you want to use. Now again, just like we did on the bottom, we want a mild angle right like that. Fold our flap over. Bring it back straight. We're ready to install.
Okay.
Just like on our colonial casing for siding, we want this pointed edge to sit in behind this. So that's the first thing we're going to do, is get that sucked right into there. We slide it over, lock in the rest of it, line it up with the lock. Bada boom. Here's one side done. If you want. So now for the top, you take your exact measurement and cut it to size. Lay it where you want it to go. And what you're going to do is mark your inside miter points on both sides. Take your template, slide it up to your mark, draw your line, do the other side. And that's it. Now, if you wanted to, rather than cutting an exact size, you could have left it a little bit longer, done all this cutting here. What I'm going to do is get it locked in on the bottom until you're locked into the receiver. Take the other side, get that hooked underneath the molding. Again, if you wanted to, which I even prefer more, is leaving the top long, this section here long, and then coming in with your snippers at the end of it and doing a relief cut that way. That way there, your material always gets to the outside edge. I like having more coverage in this area, so that's why I leave it squared down. But if you want, you can just miter this edge right up to there and give you a nice mitered corner.